like a more casual run through this. But basically, this is the title of our project: User Interface and Data Visualization for Environmental Sensitive. Okay, so the goal of our project is to design essentially a user-friendly software interface to analyze environmental impact of products. And so the environmental assessment method is LCA, which I'm sure you guys heard about before, but it essentially allows a company or a user to be able to take a product, break it up into its parts, and then be able to measure any environmental emissions or impact from it.
So just as a general overview of how this process works, let's all just kind of pretend that we're like fridge makers, right? So like, say I'm making a fridge and it has a bunch of different components and I want to analyze like the environmental impact of all those different components. So you can actually take each material through like this whole life cycle, which is why it's known as life cycle assessment. And that goes from extracting the material to forming it, like manufacturing processes for those materials, to transportation of those materials, to disposal of those materials, etc. And so like each material in my fridge is going to have some sort of environmental impact, and these things already are in databases that we can pull from. So going through, the problem is that even though a lot of the software exists that allows people to conduct these life cycle analysis, the entire process, it's like hard to use without expert knowledge of how life cycle analysis works, because the user interface is just poorly designed. You know, it's very outdated, it's old, it's really complex, and there's a really high learning curve when you're trying to learn one of these. And so yeah, again, our goal is just to make it a lot more user friendly and make the data visualization of what analyzing all that data spits back out at you better. So here's just some examples of like current software, why they don't work, right? Yeah. They're super outdated. So like the general process is that you're gonna have like a bill of materials of like your fridge. So this is what makes up the handle, this is what makes up, I don't know, the cooler or whatever. And then you're gonna like input everything that was used to make that material, and you transfer that material through like this process, and then you hit like an analyze button, and then it gets you like a graph that looks similar to this. And this is pretty non-informative as well. As you can see, like it'll tell you like, oh, this copper is contributing like this much to like climate change or whatever, but like it's like kind of hard to really compare different materials to each other, which is what most companies would be interested in. Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned this, but like the reason why companies are interested in this is just like they want to see what model or version of whatever they're making is greener, and then they can go through like this whole forming process of being able to say like, oh, my product is actually greener than this other company's, and then part of that like involves using these software to do that.
Okay, so in terms of what we were going to do to solve this problem, we essentially want to redesign the whole interface. So that involves going through a lot of user testing to figure out like what people want to see in it. And currently, right now, like Caroline mentioned, the software is mainly used by like LCA experts, but we want our user to be able to be anyone, whether it's someone interested in product design or just someone who wants to learn about LCA in general. So because of that, we do have to perform a lot of user studies, which is what we've been doing in the past few weeks, and coming with prototypes, refining them, so on and so forth. So that way we'll have a final prototype, and then we're going to implement it, and then integrate it with the databases, which is, you know, just contains all the information about the material, the emissions, and stuff like that. And then so, yeah. So this is our project timeline. So we started off by splitting it up into different sections, which we can go into more detail later in terms of like how you divide up the interface. But there's things like the bill of materials, how you view the material, how you add a process, and that all has to be like redesigned because we don't know if the current ways of doing it is the best and like most user-friendly way. So we've been doing all this user testing. We're going to try to have a final prototype in December, and then after that was when we were going to do the software implementation. And I think the next slide is kind of unnecessary. Yeah. So
it's like a shortened version of the general process, but does anyone have any questions?
Like sustainable mines, what What's the eclipsing one?
I'm just thinking that like if there's an input that people are used to using, if they have been trying to use the software, like they should be able to use it.
So we'll show you some examples, and the thing is that they're posted, and that's why it's really, that's why we've been focusing so much on the design part and the structure and implementation. So like one way is this thing called Minds, which if you guys want to look more into this later, get on time, we'll give you links and stuff. Because it actually like is way easier to understand the whole process if you do it yourself.
So this is actually the least complex and the only
Because it's only a week long.
yeah, okay. My trial is expired, so
Yeah,
you might have to test this on your own. But if you go to sustainableminds.com, maybe I